Hello and welcome to part 2 of Who Do You Need to Convince, in part of our series of how-to guides for implementing human rights education across your setting. Now, we've put this bit together separately to talk about professional standards, political impartiality and age appropriateness. It's not going to go into in this video as much detail as you will find on the website, where we've actually put a very, very clear factual guidance about how the human rights education supports all of those things. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the nervousness that perhaps I felt as a head teacher when implementing human rights, and also how we made sure in the material that we've provided for you that it is meeting the professional standards for teachers. It's not requiring teachers to pass their views on about how they think a topic should be developed, and how we've made sure very clearly the material that we've used is age appropriate. Now, we all know our professional standards, but I always think that part 2 in terms of the standards for teachers in relation to personal and professional conduct is very, very important. And I think there are some key bits in there where some people might think, well, how does human rights align itself with that? For example, ensuring that personal beliefs are not expressed in ways which exploit pupils' vulnerability or might lead them to break the law. So what we've absolutely done is we've made sure that the schemes of learning are designed in such a way to demonstrate the responsibilities that are in place in law that helps us to respect the rights of others. It is in synergy with fundamental British values because the International Declaration of Human Rights is enshrined in British law. And crucially, we've designed this material in such a way to protect teachers from sharing their own personal beliefs, and so that vulnerable pupils understand the complexities of growing up in our volatile and uncertain world. We also, as well, when we look at political impartiality, we've taken the guidance that Nadeem Sahawi sent out quite some time ago. And it's important for us to identify that he doesn't say that you shouldn't be discussing politics. What he says in that document that went out to schools is that there are some concepts and views that can be considered as shared principles that underpin our society, and not political issues in this context. That means that the International Declaration of Human Rights is enshrined in law, and what we've done is we've looked at how these have been used historically and how we can look at them again in the context of our own and others' rights and responsibilities. This is in line with the guidance. Secondly, we make sure our material is presented in a fair and dispassionate approach. For example, there is a scheme of learning about votes for women in the UK for 11 to 14-year-olds, and we build that material up in such a way that the pupils are given the opportunity to explore the different methods of the suffragettes and the suffragists. Pupils develop their opinions through exposure to the material over time, and they're able then to bring their substantive knowledge and disciplinary knowledge to key questions, such as which was more effective, the militant campaign or the peaceful protest? Were both campaigns interdependent on each other? Why? Did the militant action take away the right to peaceful protest? Which wins out, deeds, not words, or negotiation? And then finally, is it down to a small group of charismatic individuals to bring about change? We pose these key questions, or hinge questions as you were, at various points along the scheme of learning. And we make sure that pupils have had enough exposure to the material to be able to think carefully about their viewpoint. Furthermore, we explore the material so that we give weight to the lesser known individuals. We've said this before, and it's really, really key to us at Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Education, that what we do is we make sure those lesser known individuals, those supportive people, are known as well as perhaps the big voices. For every Martin Luther King, there needed to be a Bayard Rustin. An example of what we've done here can be seen in the Votes for Women, where we look at people such as the stories of Annie Kennett and Princess Sophia Dudley, and we also look at activists in Scotland, Wales, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And finally, we make sure that we link our work to the present day. So in this particular scheme of learning, what pupils are expected to do is to look at the historical activism that took place to gain the votes for women in the UK, and they look at how some people are still disenfranchised from voting in the present day. And we encourage them to think about the questions raised from the past and what actions they may take to be successful. Which were the most successful actions that took place in ways that protect the rights of ourselves and others, but also ensures our responsibilities towards others. We've also been very careful in terms of making sure the material is age appropriate. And we've done this so that the more nuanced and complex issues are scaffolded and presented to older pupils in such a way that gives them the knowledge and skills to discern that some public figures who may well have fought for human rights and be recognised for it have character traits that are human and complex and sometimes a feature of their time. We do not go in for shock and awe, and we have made sure that all the material has been checked thoroughly before its inclusion. We attempt to make sure that we use material that is sourced from museum resources and has been fact-checked. We also make sure as well that when addressing any sensitive political issues, that it is done in an objective way and there isn't any inflammatory material included. The purpose being is that we're encouraging the pupils to explore human rights as opposed to provoking an involuntary emotional response from the pupils. The guidance for schools in England in terms of political activity is also very clear. The guidance talks about the fact that actually older pupils in later secondary year groups may have more developed opinions and a greater awareness of current affairs. There is maybe a desire to partake in pupil-led political activity. It also states that this should be encouraged and that schools can help pupils to set up their own networks or clubs to focus on political issues where they're deemed appropriate. To this end, what we have done though is made sure that any campaigning or social action is developed through an understanding of the different movements in time. It might be writing speeches, it might be thinking about different action that's been taken in terms of the Ella Roberts Foundation for Clean Air, as opposed to some of the more protesting action that can be taking place across our country and elsewhere. We've also made sure as well that when we do this, that it is aimed at the secondary school pupils as opposed to primary school pupils.